All right, welcome to a very revealing Beat the Odds. Brandon reveals the mental approach players have. Teddy reveals his approach to betting the props. And Jack reveals his belly. Yeah, we did our own Pro Bowl skills thing. Wasn't good. Beat the Odds starts now, though.
From our Las Vegas studios, this is Beat the Odds,
sponsored by Superbook at the Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino, and powered by SportsGrid.
And here we go. Welcome inside our Las Vegas studio. I'm Dave Hall.
And I'm Mariah Janos. It's the week before the championship game. We'll get you ready with all the betting numbers, trends, and fun stats. We also had our own skills competition, as Dave mentioned. Me against Jack.
Skills. Well, here's a little. Are you sore at all today?
You know, I'm actually feeling good. Round 2. Let's go.
Okay, well, here's a little sample of what happened. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God. We'll have the dramatic finish to that. Also on the show, Teddy is taking us to school and the smart way to bet on those player props.
And Brandon Marshall is back to help me break down what unfolded in the conference championships. Plus, our guys from SportsGrid are ready to roll, too.
Hey, Vegas, we're excited to beat the odds with you guys once again. Coming up, we get set for the big game off the heels of some quarterback performances that were a little surprising, with Jalen Hurts dominating through the air and Pat Mahomes dominating on the ground, and what that could mean when we get to that big game. So sit tight. We'll join you in just a bit. Back to the crew out in Vegas.
Listen, in the words of Kenny Powers, I'm a good athlete. I'm not trying to be the best at exercise. All right, once we got the exercise portion, I failed a little bit, but a little bit like some of the teams that played last weekend, right?
Sure, well, I'm glad I stayed out of that competition is all I'm going to say.
Yeah, it was best.
There was no way.
No room for the squeamish or the young. Well, we should hide women and children for those things. But a lot of things going on this weekend.
Or
of course,
anyone
next
with
weekend.
vision, actually. Yeah.
So let's recap a little bit about what just happened. Shockers and stunners this past weekend. Kansas City now 17-0 in one-score games, 9-0 their last 9 playoff games. And, of course, KC opponents have more penalties in 11 of the 12 playoff games they played in recent years. And that doesn't even count the key fourth down call. Washington against Philly. Well, Washington a +5 turnover margin against Detroit. They were -4 in Philly. Big difference in that game. And in the playoffs now, Philly, 10 turnovers forced with their defense. 0 that they've turned it over offensively. Of course, Jalen Hurts said, Coach Sirianni let me out of my straitjacket last week. Great matchup set for the big game next Sunday.
Yeah, we got two of the 3 teams that I think everybody was comfortable with. I mean, the look-ahead lines were all basically Washington was going to be a pretty big underdog over a field goal to everybody. The other 3 teams, they were about even. So we got that based on a play here and there. Kansas City doing it. If we don't believe at this point that Taylor Swift's in charge of everything, I mean, all you have to do is watch Kansas City because they seem to get it done, and nobody really knows exactly why. Philadelphia is winning the way that
Haters
teams
gonna hate.
And they may continue it, but Philadelphia keeps winning the way that teams that win championships win. Defense, running game, winning the line of scrimmage. So excited about the matchup coming up next week. But we got 2 of the best teams there for sure.
I'm not sure which performance was more underwhelming, Washington's or yours in the skills challenge. We'll have more of that video later. All right, Teddy, how did we get here? How did these 2 teams get here?
So Kansas City, a rare team to make it to the big game with a losing point spread record. They finished 9-10 against the spread full season. Usually the teams that make it this far have covered a bunch of numbers. That wasn't the case for KC. Of course, 4-7 ATS, their first 11 tries as favorites. Their last 5 tries, they're favored here. They're either 4-1 or 5-0 ATS, depending on where you got the number in that Houston game. Philly, 13-7 ATS in 20 games, 6-2 ATS in 8 games away from home. They've been making their backers money, and their only straight-up loss in September came by only 3 against Washington in that second meeting.
Kansas City, they've been one of the few teams that have been making money and winning games until this year. Now they're winning games and not making their people money. For people who are betting in Kansas, not the best combination.
All right, well, KC and Philly winning was actually welcome news to Vegas sports books. Mariah is at the Superbook, Westgate, Las Vegas, with more on that.
Thanks, Dave. I'm here with the Vice President of Race and Sports here at the Westgate, John Murray. John, we have this in-between week. The stage is set for New Orleans, but how did you guys do overall during the conference championships?
We did very well. Having Philadelphia cover against Washington in the first game was very good for us. Washington was a very popular dog play, and we did well in the second game. Kansas City winning the conference was a great result for us in the futures. Now, if they win the championship, that would be a different story.
And during this in-between week, do you see a high volume of wagers, or do people typically tend to wait until the game gets closer?
It'll be much more the following, the second weekend, I should say. The first week, people are betting on other stuff. They're betting on college and pro basketball, maybe a little bit of hockey. They're not really looking at this championship game yet. They have very short attention spans, and they're not ready to look at something that's a following weekend.
Kansas City currently favored by 1.5. Do you typically see a lot of line movement when it comes to this game?
Not as much as a regular season game or even a playoff game. The market on the big game is very tight. It would take a significant injury, or it'd have to be a very, very sharp group. The market's really accurate on a game like this. It's very unusual to see big line movement in this game.
All right, John, thank you so much. Dave will send it back to you in studio.
Thanks to you guys. Well, unless you like sleeping on the couch, you better stick around as Jack and Teddy dig into the numbers and show you the smart ways to look at this game and stay out of the doghouse.
Before we head to break, during the win over Washington, Philly scored 55 points. That broke the record for most points ever scored in a conference title game. Whose record did they break? The answer coming up next.
Beat the Odds is sponsored by Superbook Westgate Las Vegas
and powered by Sports Grid.
Welcome back. Before the break, we asked you during the win over Washington, Philly scored 55 points. That broke the record for most points ever scored in a conference title game. Whose record did they break? The answer, Buffalo. During the 1990 AFC Championship, Buffalo scored 51 points in a win over Oakland to reach the big game for the first time. All right, it's time to bring in our champ, Brandon Marshall. Brandon, as a former player, having played in 2 championships, what is this off week, this in-between week, like for the players?
It's exciting, right? It's invigorating. Now, you want to get all your ducks in a row because you're excited to go to, whatever site you're going to for a full week. You're locking in. You kind of, breathing a little bit because, okay, we got over the hump as far as the conference championship goes now. But now it's time to lock in. I'm really excited to go. I'm getting all my tickets together for my family. It's a lot of different logistics, but you still got to lock in at the same time.
Well, speaking of those conference championships, I want to go back for a second because they were emotional for fans all around. Let's start with the biggest one, the AFC. If you are a Buffalo fan, I'm hearing a lot of talk about Sean McDermott. The 4th and 1 calls, being aggressive there, but not really converting. You got the 2-point conversions that failed. The tush pushes that were just not Philly style. What are your thoughts on that?
I think he was being aggressive. And I think he understands that I'm on the road in KC. I have to be aggressive. I've never beaten them in the playoffs, so maybe I need to try something different than I've done before. So I think he was just being aggressive. Now, Sean McDermott is a good coach. He has Buffalo on the verge every year, but on the verge isn't good enough. So at some point, they're going to have to look internally and see, okay, is this the right guy? Because we can never get over the hump.
Yeah, it's frustrating because it's like, well, they keep going to the championship games and things still aren't happening. How can you really be mad? But it's still very frustrating. Now, looking at the NFC Championship game, Jaden Daniels played a heck of a game. He did what he could. With all the fumbles, do you think Washington kind of failed him, or was Philly just way too good?
It was both, because those 3 turnovers or 3 or 4 turnovers, I forgot, they led to touchdowns, right? So you cannot win a football game in that manner. Now, Washington definitely fumbled it away, right? But they also got outplayed by Philly. So you can't do that against a Philly team that is this powerful, this explosive. So I think 2 things can be true at once.
Yeah, for sure. All right, our matchup is set. Brandon, thank you so much. After 2 high-scoring games in the conference finals, will it be another shootout next week? Here's Jack with more on that.
Yeah, so we're still a week or so away, but it's important to figure out by the time we get to next week, we're going to have so much information. We're going to be inundated with all types of what they've done in the past, what they've done recently. So how do you know how to cipher through this information and figure out what will help you with this game coming up? You're looking at trends recently versus long-term trends. Always keep in mind the general public likes overs and they like favorites. So there's normally going to be a little bit of value in the unders and the underdogs. Doesn't mean they're always going to win, but start there. Kansas City, both of these teams under most of the time this year, I say the majority of the time, 11-8 with Kansas City, Philly 11-9 to the under. But when you're talking about Kansas City, you can make excuses. Well, their offense is getting healthy. They've got Xavier Worthy. They've got Hollywood Brown's back and all these different players. And the fact that they figure out a way to turn it on, Kansas City, that is, when they get to these big games. So be careful and look at what the coaches like to do. That's where I like to start. What can we rely on from a game stance philosophy? And in this case, you're going to get both these coaches, especially Andy Reid, that likes to control the clock, doesn't want to take a lot of chances early. And so even if this total does get over, expect long periods of no scoring. Philly wants to run the ball efficiently. They want to run it a lot. They don't want to put the game in Jalen Hurts' hands. So be very, very careful looking at what you saw last week and saw all those points and deciding that's going to happen again this week. You're going to be looking at longer, slower drives. It might get over, think last year's championship game where you had no points, 13 in the first half, a few points in the second half, then they get to overtime, it gets closer, but most of the game trended under. So just some things to talk about and think about as we get all this information coming in.
Sure, and it's important to note, last week was last week. This week's going to be this week. But we do want to note the big game trends. Dogs have been cashing to the tune of 13-4 the last 17 big games, 17-6 the last 23. So it's been a difficult game to lay points in. The straight-up winner, 47-7 with 3 pushes against the spread. So lots of people, for good reason, when they like the underdog, will back the underdog on the money line. And, of course, 57 big games with a posted total. What do we got? 28 overs, 27 unders, and 2 pushes. No trend whatsoever for that. When we talk about props, I like to give a general props approach. Number 1, do your homework. Mispriced props is what everyone is looking for. Casual bettors like to risk a little to make a lot. They're betting yes safety. They're betting yes overtime. They're betting yes missed extra point. Pro bettors are very comfortable laying up a lot to win a little when it's positive expectation. And it's fine to have fun and enjoy the action. Not fine to blow your whole bankroll. This is one week where we want to keep our unit sizes relatively small.
Kind of nice we have some information on both these teams just from a couple years ago as well.
Sure. Yeah, no doubt. All right, so how much will Jalen Hurts throw? How much will Patrick Mahomes run? Our pals from Sports Grid weigh in on that.
Kevin Walsh and Joe Lisi here, and the matchup is set. Once again, in the big game, we have Kansas City going up against Philadelphia. We'll look at what these two teams did in the game that got them here and which performances stood out. For Philadelphia, always the performances from their star running back Saquon Barkley jump off the page, but I think it was the passing attack answering the bell that many have been calling for, Joe, in both their quarterback, Jalen Hurts, as well as their lead wide receiver, A.J. Brown, putting up big numbers in the passing game.
Hurts had a dynamic day, not just on the ground, but to your point, through the air. The critical third down conversion to A.J. Brown put them in scoring position in the second quarter, and A.J. Brown with a breakout performance, 6 receptions, 96 yards, Kev, the big touchdown. That's what you want to see out of the passing attack as they move forward in a couple of weeks against that stout Kansas City defense. So we'll see how it plays out, but a dynamic performance by Jalen Hurts and the crew.
I think, the thing for me, and I'm sure many have heard how I've felt around Philadelphia throughout this season, I've never questioned if they can pass the ball. It's just kind of acknowledging they have not needed to in so many instances. They have a rush attack that has been largely unstoppable this year, and that's what makes Saquon so fascinating heading into this game is, can he be stopped when we look at Kansas City? Because everybody says before every game, well, they're going to sell out to stop Saquon. Apparently that's what Washington was going to do. And on the first play, he went 60 to the house. I guess they forgot the game plan.
They did. And Saquon Barkley's going to get his touches. He's going to make yards, and he's going to have explosive plays. That's his MO throughout the regular season and now in the playoffs. Can you contain him, keep him potentially under 125 130 rushing yards.
Yep.
That remains to be seen, but let's not forget, he didn't catch the football against Washington. That's another added dimension, and we saw it last year with Christian McCaffrey as well. Going up against that Kansas City defense, it was McCaffrey in the receiving game. That's something to keep an eye out on.
Speaking of Kansas City, when you get to the biggest game, right, everything is an option, which is, I think, very interesting because I somewhat wonder if Kansas City feels as if they've already played their biggest game. they don't let Mahomes have designed runs. They're horrified of him ever even running a QB sneak. We were running QB powers down in the red zone, finished that game with multiple rushing scores. What would you expect from Mahomes on the ground specifically going up against Philly?
I don't think 20, 25 yards is out of the realm of possibility, especially if the game is on the line. We've seen Patrick Mahomes extend plays with his legs.
Yeah.
Those design runs that we saw last week against Buffalo, I don't think we'll see those. I think that was an added dimension in the game plan that they exploited from the Buffalo defense. I don't know if we'll see Patrick Mahomes carry it designed 5 or 6 times in that game. It's broken runs in terms of man-to-man coverage, specifically in terms of 3rd and 4th downs.
I think for KC, what stood out so much in that game was just the importance of their rush attack in the red area, not just Mahomes. Kareem Hunt, who truly was the lead back finally in that crowded room for KC.
Runs with an attitude. It's an added dimension. Started the scoring in regards to that matchup last week. He's a battering ram, very powerful between the tackles. I expect Hunt to get some carries in this matchup, be the lead back, but keep an eye out for Isaiah Pacheco with the extra week of preparation. Maybe he gets added into the mix as well.
Who gets used in that passing game, still interesting. Perhaps, though, the lead man in the passing game, torch being passed. We saw Xavier Worthy look great in that game. There'll be a lot of expectations for him when we get to the big game. And you know that myself, Kevin Walsh, and Joe Lisi will have you covered the entire way.
You're watching Beat the Odds.
Sponsored by Superbook at the Westgate Las Vegas Resort and Casino. And powered by Sports Grid.
All right, here we are, just hanging out in the old sports loft, shooting the breeze.
Yeah, and I heard that Jack just has something he has to get off his chest, per usual.
No, we were talking about a lot of the past stuff, right, from last year.
Sure.
I just wanted to point out that I dominated you and we went head-to-head on a game. I mean, you had under and I had over. It went over real easy. This was an interesting year, though.
I mean, you are the pro.
I was going to say, this is something he won't let me live down yet. It is his job to be better than me at this.
You asked for highlights from the year. That was one of the
looking good until it wasn't.
That was your highlight of the year.
It was a highlight that I decided to bring up. There are a lot of other highlights also. You know, we had Kansas City winning but not covering. We talked about that. But also, you know, the sportsbooks lost in December for the first time since like 2012. So you had some anomalies going on this year that you normally don't get during the season. So it's been a very interesting year.
Right. Teddy, I know you have some highlights as well.
Yeah, we got to do like point spread awards, year in review.
Let it rip. Go.
Oh, yeah. And for the second year in a row, Detroit is the point spread team of the year, 12-5 against the spread. They went 12-5 against the spread in 2023 as well. Honorable mention, Minnesota, the LA Bolts, and Denver, all better than 70% full season against the spread. Point spread disaster of the year, well, that would be Tennessee. They were historically bad. Only 2 point spread covers in 17 games. Yikes. Honorable mention, Cleveland was lousy. The G-Men was lousy. San Fran, all ATS disaster areas. Top over teams, Baltimore and Carolina, both 13-4 to the over, full season. Top under teams, G-Men and Houston, both cashed only 6 overs in 17 games. And the worst beat of the season, you know, this is always the fun one. The single worst beat, I had to think about this a lot. It was a prop. Tua passing yards over 243 and a half. He had 254 with 5 seconds left. And then, oops, 23 yards in the wrong direction on the final play of the game. That one hurt. Tough beat. But I'm over it.
That's a prop you either know a lot about or nothing about.
If you had it, you remember it. I'll tell you that.
Well, up next, these guys are going to have some best bets on player props next week, plus the video that could end what shred of manliness Jack has left.
No manliness.
I'm not trying to be the best at exercise. Hello.
It's the video you got to see. It's next. All right, welcome back to Beat the Odds. So those player props are more popular than ever these days.
Yeah, and you guys found a couple running backs that you're keeping an eye on. Teddy?
Sure, I'm going to start with Kareem Hunt. Is a guy I've got my eye on. I like him over 11.5 carries in the big game. He's going to get his chances, and we think KC wants to shorten this game. They don't want Philly's offense on the field. Kareem Hunt over 11.5 carries.
So I'll give you a bonus. If you like Kansas City, the last 2 times that they've won, purple Gatorade has come out of the jug. So if you like Kansas City, maybe it's purple if you can find that wager. If you can't, here in town, you want to go Barkley's rushing yards under. I love what this Kansas City front four is doing. They're win the line of scrimmage. I think they will limit his amount of yards per carry and yards overall in the game. So I'm going to go under on Saquon Barkley's rushing yards because I think the number's a little bit inflated on how well he's been lately.
All right, now it's a competition we've been waiting for. Mariah versus Jack. Skills challenge. Here you go. We got some world-class athletes here on Beat the Odds. Now, sadly, Brandon couldn't be here, and so instead, we got the B team. It's Jack against Mariah. And here we go. Our first event, the punt, pass, and kick. Jack, you go. You gotta punt it first, idiot.
Oh, shoot, that was worse than the other one. Perfect spiral kill!
Your best one. Don't drop it. I've got Charlie Brown.
After crunching the numbers, Jack has a slight lead, so he's going to get a 5-second head start. Jack, go! Do it!
Can't pick up all of it.
She just kicked him in the head. Oh, God. Oh, God. Oh, God.
Get out of the way! Get away from me. Why are you like that?
Yes, Mariah!
Honestly, I am so
Way to go.
talented. I don't know how I do it.
I don't want to be the best at exercise, but I get rid of that bald spot on the back of my head.
I'm glad I missed it.
You know, I noticed that. I don't want to add on, but
It's not pretty. I'm going to get some spray.
Good grief.